Started.
Okay.
Yeah, ma'am. You may proceed.
Yes. Good evening to all of you. It's a great pleasure to address this August gathering, particularly all the space enthusiasts who are present here and astro lovers across this particular community. And it gives me immense pleasure to address this evening's concluding day, we can say, of this UN declared World Space Week. And the theme for 2021 is coincidentally one which is pertaining to or which is related to my profession and presently my working, this particular tenure since last decade. I have been working in space education. So this is Women in Space. This year's theme is very apt, and I know that there are a lot of budding space scientists and engineers. I mean, both young girls as well as boys. So it is a pleasure to address this August gathering. And without wasting further time, I would like to thank the organizers that this theme and the topic which was given to me, particularly to deal with ISRO's or India's space missions. And, starting from our own Aryabhatta till today's AstroSat and going ahead with the further Gaganyaan project, which is recently announced by ISRO. So I would like to throw upon some light on these aspects. And I'll also be discussing about what is happening not only in India, but in the global scenario as well, because that has to be of interest to all the young budding scientists and engineers. So I'll also just mention a small thing which is going to probably help some of you to know what exactly this World Space Week is all about. It is, it was declared by the United Nations that 4th of October 1957 was the day chosen to begin this particular largest global space event, that is World Space Week. And 4th to 10th October and 4th of October 1957 was the day when Sputnik 1 was launched by Russia. And of course, space pioneers, the spacefaring nation, which, paved the way to space age. And that was the beginning of the dawn of space age. And 10th of October was declared by the United Nations because that was the day on 10th October 1967 when this UN treaty was signed, that the space applications and all the, things which are going to be dealt with and the technological advancements, they are for the betterment, for useful and peaceful purposes of humankind. So those were the 2 dates chosen. And this happens to be the largest global space event because it is India is one of the largest, the nation which has largest number of space related activities and events, including this one. So of course, it is a significant day for us. And the whole week was celebrated to, create this kind of awareness. And this particular public outreach activities which are conducted by you this community is definitely one which is going to be very useful for producing good hardcore and of course space engineers in the near future, space scientists and engineers, because that was the dream of late Dr. Kalam. And hats off to all of you for creating this kind of public awareness in this community. And particularly, it is not only in Nasik or Maharashtra. Your events are definitely going to make a difference across India as well as other countries. So to start with, I would like to, run a small video, which is about the Carl Sagan's, a very important video, which tells us why we are we have to look up at the skies. And I'm sure you all are doing a lot of activities which are apart from sky gazing. Of course, there are such activities which you have and the lectures, the sessions you have been conducting, particularly the, kind of workshops and sessions you have been conducting. This is definitely an inspiration to other groups as well. So I would like to run a small video of Carl Sagan, and then we start with the topic that is from Indian space mission point of view. So let me run the small video. Can I present my screen?
Yeah, ma'am. I'm giving you the rights. You may share your screen.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Well, I'll just share this small video and then I'll come back to this particular session. Well, the host has disabled participant screen sharing, it says. I'm not able to share my screen right now.
I have allowed participants to share the screen. You may share.
Okay. I'll just try again. Okay. Yes. Are you able to see the screen? Just let me know.
That's here. That's home.
No, ma'am, not yet.
Okay. Are you able to see the screen now? I think this is visible.
Yeah. We are able to see this.
Yes. Just a moment. I'll run it from the beginning.
That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering. Thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines. Every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization. Every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on a mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. The earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and triumph they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. We are obscured. In all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit? Yes. Settle? Not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known.
Well, I'm sure some of the students, some of the participants would have already seen this particular video, but this was the video for those probably who haven't seen across this particular video. This was the famous voice of Carl Sagan, the famous cosmologist of all times. And he has rightly said that this particular activity, particularly astronomy, astrophysics, and these allied branches, they are the most humbling experience and the most character building, experience. So that's the reason I thought of sharing this particular video. And yes, apart from that, I would start with a few of the particular, PPT, and then we'll be showing few more videos. I'm sure you all will be able to see it and like it. I'll go ahead with my presentation. Can I share the screen again?
Yeah, ma'am, you are able to share the screen.
Fine. Coming to the, all the aspects of space science and technology, we all know that this is definitely the most enriching and fascinating field of engineering and technology. And when we talk about astrophysics or aeronautics and astronautics, we know that this is the most sought after kind of profession, which I'm sure the future scientists and engineers will be working more and more in this particular area. So without wasting time, I'll show a small PPT and also about what ISRO is going to do and has already done in this particular space missions in the last couple of decades, as well as what would be the roadmap and the future missions. So I'll share a particular presentation right now. Okay, are you able to see the screen? Shall I?
It's still not visible, ma'am.
Just a moment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, it's visible now, ma'am. It's visible.
Yes, yes. Okay, fine. When I talk about space missions, and when we particularly deal with the Indian space missions, I'm sure our memory goes back the lane, that is the memory lane, starting from the formation of ISRO. I'll be sharing and a few dedicated slides also I'll show to our ISRO's future programs. But when we talk about space, what exactly we mean by that? Just to throw light, particularly for those who are new to this particular field. Now here you can see the picture of the moon, which is above the Earth's horizon. And this is the famous saying of Leonardo da Vinci, perhaps the oldest, beginning of humankind, you can say, the thinker who was not only, say, a sculptor or an artist or a particular, you can say, aeronautical engineer, because he was the first person who drew the sketches of how the aircraft would look like, or how the future of human space flight would be. So that's the reason we can say this was the dawn of space age, the conception of the thoughts, the thought processes of human beings. So that was perhaps the beginning, we can say. And if you go back, there were probably more and more sketches even in our Hindu holy scriptures. They have been mentioned about how our vimanas, or how our holy scriptures, they do mention about all these aspects. But just to throw a light on these human space flight and how it all began, It was this famous El Da Vinci saying. He says that, he said that earlier, his sayings, it reads like this: when once you have tasted the pleasure of flight, you will walk the earth with your eyes turned skywards, for it is there you have been, and there you will always long to return. Now, what exactly does this mean? In fact, even beyond or before this particular age, we can see, we have read, probably you might have heard, how our Hindu, astronomers, those early astronomers, people from right from Aryabhatta, Bhaskaracharya, those people were thinking, they were already, thinking in those lines that what it would be looking like when you are on Earth, how the sun-centered solar system would be, and how the moon, the phases of moon are, and how they calculate the space between Earth and the distance from Earth to moon, or from Earth to Mars and other objects. But that time there were no proper telescopes. We know that the telescopes were, the advent of telescope began very late, after Galileo's, working on the particular telescope and how it would look like. But then this was way before that. So El Da Vinci said that. And this is how the human space flight would look like. So I'll be coming to these particular kind of slides later in my next PPT as well. This was, I can say that, yes, I was fortunate to have met Dr. K. Radhakrishnan, the past chairman of ISRO and the Space Commission. And he is the man behind the success of Mangalyaan, that is the Mars Orbiter mission. And of course, the GSLV Mark III and the Fat Boy, which is supposed to be the launch vehicle, which carries the heavier payloads. So I'll be coming to all these in the later slides as well. But I was fortunate to meet Dr. K. Radhakrishnan. This was during the IET Annual Technical Convention at Delhi. And I was extremely happy because this was the day when my twin sister and myself had met the father of this particular mission. But it was not only him who did it. We know that there were other stalwarts and great personalities of ISRO who have worked relentlessly in this particular space missions. So I'll be coming to that as well. And here I would like to mention that I was extremely lucky to get the very first project to do this particular project at ISRO Bangalore. If, even say immediately after my graduation from Vishveshwaraya Technical University. This was the very first project which was actually by Department of Science and Technology, and it dealt with sensors, transducers and actuators for space application. So my journey into space science and technology, it started long back, and though my engineering was in electronics and communication, my subjects of interest were obviously communication systems, particularly radars, microwaves and radars, then satellite communication, etc. And of course, avionics was a special subject for me, which I had keen interest all the time. That is the aircraft electronics. So perhaps that was the reason I got this opportunity to work into in this particular field of space science and technology. And of course, when I was working at Rishabh Instruments, I was into electrical instruments. But there were transducers and actuators which were, dealt with in instrumentation field. But of course, I had a special place and liking for this subject. So later on, I went in to teach these subjects for UG and PG students, and also for, I'm guiding few of the projects for PhD students, particularly in this field of engineering. Which is a part of, you can say, aerospace engineering, which is, of course, a broad classification. And then there is what we call aeronautics and astronautics. So there are a lot of opportunities in this particular field. Maybe in some other session, I can deal with the opportunities and prospects for those who perhaps are not aware of what kind of prospects lie ahead. So in a separate session, of course, that is not today's session. So I'll be, the topic for today's session is slightly different. So I'll come to that slightly later on. of course, again, I was fortunate to meet Vikas Sinha, and this was, an important aspect for me because I got this opportunity to be an advisor for the Nasik Municipal Corporation's Yashwantrao Chauhan Planetarium, and under my guidance of my guru, Dr. Gowarikar sir, both Shankar Rao Gowarikar, Vasantrao Gowarikar sir, who are famous scientists, and particularly Vasantrao ji was also working with VSSC, that is Vikram Sarabhai Space Center at ISRO, Kerala, that is Trivandrum, and of course, Dr. Jayant Narlikar sir, also I keep meeting because I'm fortunate that my sister and myself, we belong to the same place. My parents are from Kolhapur, so that origin probably connects us with these two scientists, these three scientists of all times. And of course, I'm proud to say that we both we keep getting a lot of guidance and mentoring from them. Late Shankar Rao Gowarikar sir has always been guiding us and future scientists to come. He used to keep coming to Nasik as well. Well, this particular slide, why I was eager to show this slide was most of you are aware that Vikram Sarabhai was the personality who was and the chief architect of Indian space program. I'm sure you all know that how ISRO took its birth and its formation took place early on. And this was under the able guidance of Dr. Vikram Sarabhai sir. And what he used to always keep saying that, yes, this is for the future of human space program, that is for Indian space program, this is very important. He used to say that there are some people who question the relevance of space activities in a developing nation like ours, for example, like in India. But he used to say that, yes, to us, it is no ambiguity of purpose. We do not have any fantasy of competing with the economically advanced nations in the field of space exploration, or going to the moon or to the planets, or manned space flight programs, etc. But he said that, yes, we are convinced, these are the famous words of Dr. Sarabhai. He used to say that, but we are convinced that we have a role to play, meaningful role nationally and globally and in the community of nations. And we shall be second to none in the application of advanced technologies to the real problems of man and society. And why I tried to show this particular slide was because he's the father of Indian space program, the real architect, you can say, of our space program. And this was with no ambiguity. He said that this is what it has to be. That he started, in fact, this ISRO started its, space application program, knowing the problems of the fishermen who were lying around the belt of, say, Kerala and the Coromandel coast also as well. And he used to say that the east and west coast, there are a lot of people like fishermen community who are making their bread and butter by going to the seas and the deep seas for fishing. And when there used to be floods or any kind of calamity, there were no means of getting those signals or knowing in advance what is going to happen. So that's the reason the very first satellite which India had tried to send or launch, it was particularly to understand the getting the early warning signals. The sounding rocket which India had along with the RH-100-200 and also the Apache, the Nike Apache, satellites which were launched with the help of Russian technology. So that was for this purpose that, yes, we should be able to meet the requirements and to understand the problems of the fishermen and also to some extent the farmers, because we know that our country being an agricultural country, we know that almost say 3/4 of the land is green and needs to be cultivated, irrigated, etc. But there are like these flood-like situations, or it could be like even tsunamis in early 2000s we saw. all those were possible. We were able to get the signals because of the presence of these satellites. And that's the reason India had started working in these lines as to what these applications of space science and technology would be to the real problems of mankind. So this was the beginning of our Indian space program. And of course, our special regards to, thanks to Dr. Kalam sir, who we can say is the father of modern Indian space program, because he was the one who took a lot of keen interest, even as a scientist and as an advisor to our PM earlier. And then later on, he went on to become the president of India. And in his years of contribution, he had contributed not only to DRDO, but also to ISRO and this premier organizations for space and defense. And we can say that the modern day SLVs, beyond that, ASLVs, augmented space launch vehicles, and then the PSLVs and GSLVs were all, the technological developments happened at that time. So we'll come to the slides later on, and I'll show one more presentation before we conclude with this particular presentation. I'll show one more session, one more PPT as well, okay? Well, I'll be sharing one more. Are you able to see the screen? Is it visible?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, we start with this particular slides. I'm just about to show what ISRO has done so far with this humble background, as I said, and with the leadership of Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. The beginning of ISRO took place, and after that, this ISRO's launch vehicles and current launch vehicles are like this. I'll just run this particular PPT. Okay, are you able to see this?
Yeah, ma'am.
Okay, this particular format is slightly different, so I'll take, yes, okay. This was how Dr. Vikram Sarabhai sir and along with his friend, Dr. Homi Bhabha, and both were, of course, in turn good friends of Pandit Nehru ji, who was also one of the, you can say, great patrons of science and technology. So when both these great scientists were in India during the end of the Second World War, they had to they were stuck up in India at that time. So Pandit Nehru ji had, invited them, why don't you come and join our Indian, scientist program? And then we can start with these gradually. So this was how this advent of, or the beginning of space age started in India. And these two great scientists working together. And later on, as I said earlier, this particular famous statement of the relevance of space activities for developing nation, because when India started with this space program, there were countries like US, even Russia was just, they were trying to help us, but there were other European countries who said, and even today people question that India is economically not so forward like these other countries, spacefaring nations. But then what is the relevance, or how do you justify this spending so many billions or $1 trillion in these space missions? So that's the reason, the answer I can say, or in those times as well, it was answered rightly by Dr. Sarabhai sir. And even today, a lot of people question that. They say that why are you investing? Country like India is investing in all these space missions. The answer to that is for the future of fuels, or particularly the resources which our generation has already depleted at a very fast pace. So as intelligent beings, we human beings have to definitely think about what lies in the future. So space exploration on Moon or Mars or Venus or other interplanetary missions or any other astronomical missions, they are basically done for this purpose, that the resources which we are going to tap here on the Earth, on our planet Earth, we have already exhausted these resources. Then some people do question, we haven't yet fully say explored our own planet Earth. Then why do we need to go to other celestial bodies, including Moon, Mars, or Venus? So the answer here is going to Antarctica or going to Siberia, doing excavation there, or doing a lot of activities on the polar regions, particularly, which are supposed to be very rich in. Most of you are aware that this radioactive elements. Then there are uranium, which probably would be the greatest fuel for the this nuclear fuel, or there are raw materials or earth-like metals, elements, which are also there on Moon or even on Mars. So that's the reason we need to go to those other planets, as well as our own satellite, natural satellite, that is Moon. So this is definitely the reason why human beings are doing a lot of space exploration, lot of activities which are exploiting the space to a great extent. But of course, keeping the sustainability and the ecosystems intact, we can do a lot for the next generation. So that was the reason why our Indian space mission started in this humble background. This particular church, which is on the coast of Trivandrum, that is Thiruvananthapuram, that is called today a major city, you can say, in Kerala. This was chosen why? Because of the Earth's magnetic center is the equator is almost very close to this. That's the reason this Thumba Equatorial Launching Station, that is TERLS, it got started. This space mission was started there, and later on it was of course named as ISRO's Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, and of course paying due respect to the our architect of space program. And this was how our beginning of ISRO took place, or it started when Vikram Sarabhai and his other colleagues, the scientists of ISRO, they had located this particular place, that is TERLS, which is now called at Trivandrum. So they chose this particular place because it was on the seashore and the coastal Kerala, you can say, and it was of course the best place to start our space activities. So all these scientists approached the fathers at this particular church, and they said that, can we use this particular place for our doing scientific research and doing experiments in a small way, because we do not have a proper place right now. So all the villagers went and met the church clergy and the head of the church, etc. And then they convinced them, and they were readily they accepted, and they gave them permission to start their operations here. So it was this particular place in Thiruvananthapuram, now called Thiruvananthapuram. Earlier it was Trivandrum, and this was the place where ISRO's ISRO took place. The birth of ISRO took place. Later on, you can see this is the famous picture of how this particular team building took place. And here in the picture, you can see this famous picture. Later on, Dr. Bhabha also was instrumental in the success, or building this particular ISRO's facility, that is research facility. And again at Thiruvananthapuram, here you can see in this picture Satish Dhawan, and alongside there are other scientists, including Dr. Vasantrao Gowarikar sir, who was responsible for, even setting up other facilities, including the liquid propulsion systems unit, and then also the inertial systems unit, ISRO's inertial systems unit, LPSC and IISU, all situated in Trivandrum, alongside this Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, which was perhaps the you can say the beginning of ISRO. And later on, you can see that Dr. Kalam, who joined this particular team, which later on went on to become one of the spacefaring nations. Well, the earlier days, we all know that this began on the bicycle, carrying the small sounding rockets, and then rigging up those particular small sounding rockets. And later on, also on the bullock cart, you can see that this payloads were being carried, because they had to be with least vibrations. They had to be carried to the launching pad, and that's the reason this was chosen. And later on, of course, we know that in today's scenario, the things have totally changed, because we have the the trawlers, which are powerful to carry all these powerful rockets. And later on, of course, alongside TERLs, there was also this Sriharikota, which was identified by the group of scientists, that this is the best center, that is the Sriharikota launch pad, just quite near from Chennai, and of course on the Bay of Bengal, the eastern coast of India. And that was selected as the spaceport for India's, for ISRO to launch their satellites, etc. Well, in this, you can see this was the first set of rockets. That's the reason why I tried to show, is because the history goes back like this. And this is the Rohini RH-75, which was launched for the very first time on 20th of November 1967. Of course, we probably would have been slightly late compared to NASA or Russian Space Agency, the then Soviet Soyuz. Under Soyuz, we had, of course, collaborated, and also Rakesh Sharma ji was sent along with their cosmonauts. But after that, our own indigenous program started slightly late. But of course, they were taking help of the nations, including Russia, because Russia had helped us in preparing these capabilities and setting up of ISRO, etc. So the next generation of sounding rockets were Nike Apache, which was of course earlier in 1963. Later on in 67, the RH-75, that is 75 kg sounding rocket, 100 kg, and then 200. So that was the humble beginning, we can say. And as it is rightly said by Carl Sagan, any kind of, it could be astronomy or astrophysics, astrobiology, whatever, anything related or aligned to this particular thing is a character building and humbling experience for all of us, particularly gazing at the skies and to know what lies in the deep space. So there we get to know why he said that, was because then we understand how small we are. We are just a speck in this small particle in this vast universe, in this cosmic arena. We are just a mode of dust. So that was the meaning of the earlier video which I was trying to show. Well, this the famous pictures of this particular the church, which is still, it is converted now into a kind of museum, where earlier our scientists used to sit and do experiments. They used to get along with a group of scientists from Russia as well as our Indian scientists. They used to work together here. Then this is the picture of the Rohini sounding rockets. Then up to 300 kgs, then 560 kgs, these small rockets, sounding rockets, were launched from the equatorial launching pad, that is TERLs. But later on, of course, for the heavier payloads, then these rockets, even today's all these satellites, you can see they are launched from the eastern coast, that is from Sriharikota's high range altitude launch pad. And it is, of course, named after Satish Dhawan, because giving due respect to his contributions to space science and technology in India. Now you can see with this sounding rockets, we can see the history, the evolution of space age in India, it went along in these particular lines. Here you can see the launch vehicles they used to look like this. If you start from the SLVs, that is the SLV-3 being you can say the beginning, where somewhere around 80s we started with this design and research and development happening in this particular area of the space launch vehicle 3, and then the augmented space launch vehicle. Then now PSLV in 1994, it began, picking up this Polar satellite launch vehicle, this particular workhorse, which is supposed to be around 96 to 97% success rate for India. And then the, the heavier payloads are launched from this GSLV, geosynchronous launch satellite launch vehicle, and the Mark III being the fat boy. It's named as a nickname, like why? Because of the heavier payloads are also they are launched by this particular launch vehicle. And if you get to just remember, if you recollect exactly a year back, you can say when last year when India had launched Chandrayaan-2 orbiter, as well as this supposed to be they were about to launch the Pragyan rover and the Vikram lander as well. But because of the heavy launch, what you call the payload, this particular launch vehicle was chosen. So this is how the evolution of space launch vehicles have taken place in India. And of course, some of you might have read the books authored by late Dr. Kalam. He has mentioned in some of the books, particularly in Wings of Fire and some of these books, he has specially mentioned how Satish Dhawan, as a leader, as a great leader, he was responsible for, there were of course some initial hindrances, and there were not so successful missions, because we know that the launch vehicles, this SLVs, ASLV, it took time for Indian scientists to, get along this particular technology and evolve, because there were earlier failures in this. But Dr. Satish Dhawan was the one who took this under his leadership. He took the blame as a great leader, as a you can say a good human being. He used to say that I'm responsible for these failures. But when it came to success, he asked Dr. Kalam, as a project engineer at that time, as a to address the press conference. And when it came to success, he used to give this credit to his juniors and the scientists who had been contributing. But as a leader, these were the qualities which we all are supposed to learn. And the team building, particularly the synergy and the way we should work together as a team in these kind of launches. So this is what is very important to learn. I mean, not only in every launch, it tells or it teaches you some lessons. So it was like that. So this is how our launch vehicles look like. You can see this SLVs, which were the liftoff weight was around 17 tons, then 40 tons, 295, then 450. So, and GSLV being the highest, we can say, sorry, it is around 635. So payloads also are initial, they are, on the higher side. You can see earlier it was in the low Earth orbit, 40 payload, 40 kgs, then 150, 1600, then 2000 for the geosynchron, the transfer orbit, and almost 4 ton for 4,000 kgs in the last GSLV Mark III. So it is like this, that these launch vehicles also have evolved in these times. Of course, there have been a lot of lessons learned in the past. And now when we say the credit of all this goes to our ISRO, but of course the sacrifices, the contributions done for the selfless service to the country and to the nation, and of course keeping in mind of the development. We all know that these are most of the technology, they are the spin-offs of science and technology. It is in space science, space, And in defense, that lot of spin-offs get created. Just to add a bit about it, how defense, DRDO, and even for that matter in US, the small networks, the either the LANs, WANs, they used to be used only by DARPA or for defense, applications. And now these networks are global networks. We, all human beings, even common man, is getting the benefits of these spin-offs. So we should appreciate this technology of today, that is for defense, whether it is for defense or space applications. Most of these, gadgets used to be used earlier for astronauts. For example, even the biosensors, the gas analyzers, the O2 and CO2 gas analyzers, and even the oxygen or oximeter, which we use today in the during the pandemic, it became very popular. Each one, almost every citizen using this kind of oximeter. Earlier, these gadgets used to be used, whether it is medical instrumentation or electronics, telecommunication, most of these applications were used on astronauts, particularly, as I said, before the launch, before the astronauts took off or lifted off from the space shuttle or the rockets, they used to be, they used to go through this fitness, a lot of, rigorous trainings and the medical tests, etc. So all these electrocardiogram, that is the ECG, or it could be the electromyograms, EMGs, or encephalograms for the brain function. Most of these gadgets, even the imaging techniques, and now the CT scan and isotope technology is being used for imaging, etc., for patients, etc., for medical electronics point of view. But most of them are spin-offs of space science and technology, as well as defense application. So that's the reason I thought of mentioning here. So we definitely need to appreciate these applications, because earlier on astronauts, when they used to be used in early 1960s, when astronauts went into space, this technology was quite expensive. And later on, these, medical instruments, gadgets, X-ray machines, the CAT scan units, etc., they became a bit, less expensive, so that common man can use this technology even today. In fact, today we are able to see it in mass, application. So all these space applications, when we say, even earlier the satellites which used to be launched, initially they were meant for defense application, or just to know what sort of activities are happening on the borders of, say, India, on all these, vulnerable borders, you can say, or even the coastline, etc. Then these technologies started being used for entertainment as well. Now these communication satellites, then of course, the INSAT and all started, they were built a bit later on. Of course, the INSAT series of satellites, then the communication satellites. Today we have this Cartosats, and of course the Cartosat 2, which is quite a heavy payload. It was launched very recently, and it is giving a lot of, it's mapping the data and sending all those images, high resolution images, to the Earth station, and then we are using it. Even today, if you see, the farmers, particularly for the agricultural applications for the farmers, they can use this kind of space applications. Even the Bhuvan, this app, which is meant for, giving information. This process, the raw data gets processed, and then the information, useful information, goes to farmers. Even in case of, say, today's the weather, this kind of weather, like early warning signals, or anticipating that there is going to be, showers, or there are going to be, say, hailstones or whatever. Particularly in Nasik, a place like Nasik, where there are a lot of grape or vineyards, etc. So there, these farmers get to know that the commercial crop may be hampered. So that's the reason they can take preventive action. They can, protect the crop or the yield from destruction or, loss or whatever. So these kind of signals are basically we are getting from the satellites, and they are going to be processed, and they go to the farmers or those particular, end users for whom this useful information would be of very much importance. So of course, the land information systems, water information system, we call them GIS applications, all these are definitely going to be for the betterment of humankind. And here on the screen, you can see the most versatile launch vehicle which India has, delivered, and this is the success story of PSLV. India is not only launching our own vehicles. We started our Aryabhatta, or the launch of Aryabhatta. Of course, we took the help of Russia to design some payloads, etc., and important systems, the structure of the satellite, etc. And now HAL Aerospace Division, then of course, along with ISRO, there is this National Aerospace Labs. Then apart from that, CSIR is also designing, and of course, Bell is also helping them with the electronics aspects. So all these satellite launches are made possible because of this particular PSLV. And with this workhorse, which is most cost effective, we can say, and that's the reason our own country is launching this, our own satellites, but they are also, we are able to launch the satellites of other countries, including, you might have heard that in 2016 February, we had launched 104 satellites in one go, in which 96 satellites were Dove satellites from US. And of course, other countries, including the Netherlands, then the Danish, European space agencies, also meaning European countries are also sending their satellites for launching here because they are most cost effective. We have launched even the Russian satellites, apart from German satellites, French satellites, UAE, from the Netherlands, etc. So all these countries are approaching India because we are able to do it with frugal engineering, it's called. That is the most economical launches with least resources, we can say. And that's the reason they are also able to afford it to send from India. And of course, Antrix, which is the commercial wing of ISRO, is, managing these launches of other countries. And maybe in near future, what would happen is we are already started launching our country's satellites and other countries' satellites. Now, say with the Chandrayaan 3 in pipeline, which is of course going to be a stepping stone for the earlier Chandrayaan 2 mission, where Chandrayaan 2 orbiter is still orbiting around Moon and sending high resolution photographs and the images. And we know that India also in Chandrayaan 1 was able to send the Moon Impact Probe, which was able to, prove that there is water on the surfaces, that the hydroxyl molecules and the signatures we were able to, contribute. This is perhaps the greatest contribution of India to the global scenario, because that was the time, along with NASA and even the future NISA, that is NASA, as well as ISRO's collaborated efforts would be to, send specifically some high resolution, high quality sensors, and to launch these particular satellites, which will also tell us, for example, the melting of the glaciers, the Himalayan glaciers, etc. So, which is of course increasing the mean sea level of most of the countries which are lying on the coastal area. So all these are contributions of India to the humankind. So as I said, in the near future, in Chandrayaan 3, perhaps we'll be also again attempting to, land the lander. It was earlier named Vikram lander, named after, of course, Vikram Sarabhai, and we were not able to manage to make it in first go, but nevertheless, it's a stepping stone, we can say. In the next mission, India will be trying to do that. And with the success of, say, landing the landers and the rovers on already in pipeline, that we are working on Chandrayaan 3, and most of you would be knowing about this. And then Shukrayaan 1, that is Venus mission, which would be the first mission, along with the collaboration of researchers and scientists and professors, students from various colleges as well. We have, ISRO has taken help and inputs from them as well. Then later on, of course, the Chandrayaan 3, then Shukrayaan 1, Mangalyaan 2, and Aditya L1 mission, that is the mission to the sun. Will be sending the probes, which will be, of course, going very near to the sun. So that will be the Aditya mission. And the most important one, that is the Gaganyaan project, which is going to be the human, first ever human space flight of indigenous mission or contribution of India. So that's the reason it's going to be very important. So as it was recently, most recently announced by Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji, that India has already started working on Gaganyaan project. It was launched almost 2 years back in April 2020, and even before that, India has started, training the future Vyomnauts. They are called Vyom, meaning space in Sanskrit. We are using all these terms in Sanskrit origin. We know that Shukrayaan, Aditya, or whether it is Mangalyaan or Chandrayaan, all these, they are, the words have evolved, or they have the origin in Sanskrit language. Not to forget our Indian, background of all this. So that's the reason it's going to be very ambitious. As I said, this is the Indian space odyssey. We can say this is the space legacy of India, which will be carried further. And of course, our Prime Minister has also announced that these astronauts, most probably in the first set of astronauts would be 3, and 1 woman would be, voyaging into space. So that was announced by Modi ji some time back. So the training has already begun, and it is in Russia. Our scientists are getting trained in Moscow, and of course that will, and of course our astronauts and scientists, they are working together, and we'll be sending human space program. That is our set of astronauts, or the Russians call them cosmonauts. We call them Vyomnauts. So that's the difference. Now this Gaganyaan, what it is supposed to be doing is, of course, it is not just sending human beings into space. And these astronauts, they have to go there, work in space, and come back safely to the Earth, back into our own soil, and that too, with no harm to any of these astronauts or Vyomnauts. So that is really challenging, and India hasn't done that in past as well, because now it is right from designing of the space suit for for male and female astronauts, of course women astronauts as well. Making these space suits is also a very difficult and expensive affair. I'm sure most of you would be knowing that space suit costs billions of dollars, and it is for the safety of the human beings, because when they go into space, into deep space, we say that of course they have to be protected. That protective gear has to be there, and also there is a lot of radiation. They are subject to a lot of radiation outside. So all these things we have to take into account, and then we should be able to send our Vyomnauts into space. So Gaganyaan being the most complicated and the most complex of all the projects we have undergone so far. So, well, coming back to this particular slide on the screen, you can see this is the most versatile launch vehicle, the PSLV, and you can see the stages of these. Now this solid strap-ons, you might have seen when this Chandrayaan 2 was launched. Well, that was the GSLV Mark III, which was the launch vehicle. But something similar, what I was trying to say is, there you will be able to see this kind of rocket. That was this launch vehicle, which was used for our Chandrayaan 2 project earlier. And it, of course, contained that it comprised of that orbiter, the lander, as well as the rover. So all put together, it was quite a heavy payload. And using this GSLV, we were able to Mark III. We were able to launch it into space. And if you recollect that in September 19, when most of the Indians were glued to television, and that was one occasion when as our Prime Minister had mentioned, that this is one opportunity for all Indians to come together, because sometimes we come together to celebrate the success of say World Cup or any matches or kind of such events, but this being the scientific most important event which took place that time, at the time of the landing of the Vikram lander, when it was just about to land some 2 kilometers away, it was not able to do that soft landing. Unfortunately, it was not a success, but nevertheless, what important thing which made us realize is we as Indians can come together even in such occasions. If you recollect, a kid from say age of 6 to 60s or 70s, even the grandparents sitting along with their children, grandchildren in front of a television at 2 a.m. So that was the way to come together and see how these things, technological marvels, took place. So that was one occasion which I too recollect, because I was interviewed on a couple of television channels as well as radio channels. And at that time, as an expert in, or as a panelist, I was there to see. Physically, I was not able to see from Sriharikota, but here when the television, was this TV channels were telecasting this particular this great event. So all the Indians had come together. So according to me, that was one great achievement for India, to prove that we are all together when in case of success or failure, and we have to move ahead, whether it is a failure today, nevertheless tomorrow it could be a success story for us. So, well, this was the slide which I wanted to show you, how this particular GSLV is launched, along with its, the materials which are used here. You must know that this is the cryo stage, that is the most challenging aspect. Even during the Chandrayaan-2 mission, I remember that initially the mission was aborted just before the actual launch, because there were some leakages in the fuel tanks. So that's why it was called off. But nevertheless, in the second attempt, it was a success. And of course, the orbiter, the success of Chandrayaan-2 orbiter itself is a big achievement for us. And even the orbiter Chandrayaan-2, that is the moon, orbiter, that is the satellite around the moon, which is orbiting and sending those high resolution images even today, particularly the craters where there were, water could be found in the south pole of moon. So a lot of, countries, most of these countries are eyeing for that, and including countries like China. So that's the reason, earlier there used to be a space race between America and Russia, that is NASA and Russian Space Agency, Roscosmos or RSA. But now, today we can see that China, a country like China, which has a space station of its own, whereas the International Space Station is a collaboration of all these countries coming together, including the ESA, European Space Agency, apart from NASA, ESA, then JAXA, that is Japanese Space Agency, the German Space Agency, Mexican Space Agency, Canadian Space Agency, the CSA has Canada has its Canada. So all these countries are coming together, working for international cooperation, which is the need of the hour, and it is the future. But if you see, on the other hand, China alone has its own space station. The earlier one was defunct and it splashed into ocean sometime back, but now the Shangong-2 is orbiting, and it's a bit dangerous or over-ambitious projects for China, going ahead past all these other countries. Of course, it doesn't mean that they are having that kind of monopoly in space-faring nations or the space race. But what Dr. Kalam also used to say, that India should be able to produce those good space scientists and engineers. It's not for competing with this Indo-China space race or whatever. It is for our own country to come up. Of course, as a superpower, we are, trying to contribute every small inch. Every day we are, doing the small contribution, which could perhaps lead for a giant steps. It's said that these baby steps which we are taking would probably be a giant step in the years to come. So with this, of course, then there are interdisciplinary activities which are going on. And some of you might be knowing that Aryabhatta was launched sometime in April 1975. And the famous picture of that Aryabhatta, that, hexagonal kind of structure, which was there even on the 2 rupees note, it was printed. So that was, what you should remember, say, in your childhood, if you have seen that particular note. And even similarly, recently, these pictures were printed on stamps or the particular, currency of India. So that itself shows that these are not just the scientific or astronomical or space science applications, but they reach the humankind as well. Now, if you see this particular, this particular slide, which has 4 parts, you can see Chandrayaan-1, which was launched in on 22nd of October 2008. That is almost more than a decade back. But at that time, Dr. Kalam, when he was approached by these scientists from ISRO, they said that this time we have done Chandrayaan-1 as an orbiter around Moon. But why can't we do a lander and rover? So at that time, it was decided that yes, the next mission is going to be a lander and that of a rover. It's, of course, it took so much of time in between because we had done all this indigenously. And for those who probably are not aware that apart from ISRO, there are, of course, private companies also which are, helping ISRO to build spacecraft structures, etc. And apart from the, fuel systems, etc., ISRO, and then along with the HAL, as I said earlier, HAL Aerospace Division, then NAL and other, associated organizations, CSIR, are helping. Then there is Walchand Industries Limited, which is, helping them in making those structures for the launch vehicles, as well as the structures for the rockets, etc. Then there are companies, including now in aerospace and defense, you might be aware that Tata Aerospace Limited has come up. Then there is Godrej Aerospace and Defense Wing, which are private players are helping. They may not be completely doing the actual launching, etc. on their own, but Godrej Defense, then L&T Aerospace and Defense divisions, they have specifically for aerospace, and Godrej Defense is also working along with DRDO as well as the BrahMos for making those components for missiles, etc. And also, of course, Aeronautical Defense Agency, ADA, they all work in tandem to make these things happen for space and defense, because we know that space is happening, defense is happening at the back end, and space we see at the front end. The budgets which are sanctioned for every country, they are mostly spent for aerospace and defense applications, but most of the space applications we can show it. It's like demonstration for other countries as well, and not just to show our capabilities or technical capabilities, but also to get some results like our own Cartosats and Astrosat satellites have been doing. Now here you can see this Astrosat, which was launched on 28th of September 1915. And we took, of course, the help, and of course other countries came along with their, sensors, or some countries said that they want to contribute for some payloads, different payloads for imaging, etc. So they directly and indirectly helped this Astrosat mission. So this was India's first multi-wavelength, you can say, a space or observatory, which is like parked in space. But of course, it is going around Earth, revolving and sending a lot of useful information, as I said earlier. Then there's this Mars mission. We know that it was a great success story because it's rightly said that this budget was less expensive than the movie Gravity, which was, they spent millions, billions of dollars for making that particular film. But of course, our space missions are so, cost effective and with frugal engineering, as I said earlier. And then the last one, if you go this way, if you can see the last slide, which is this space capsule recovery experiment, which was called SRE. It was this launch vehicle, reusable kind of technology we want to, try. And this particular capsule was not just, used for this thing. This was basically a capsule which perhaps is a kind of preliminary stage. If you want to send human beings or human space flight program, for that, this is very much necessary, because we want to bring those human beings, the astronauts, the Vyomnauts, for Gaganyaan project. We want to bring them back during the re-entry, bring them back safely to the Earth. So this is about our space missions. Different space missions.
Then you must have KVPY valid fellowship, and additional cutoff is there for after for the examination of 12th standard. If we talk about
ma'am, you have been muted. Can you again? Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, is it okay now?
Yeah, there was some disturbance, so I had muted all participants.
Yeah, but now is it okay? Were you able to see the previous slides and hear it?
Yeah, your presentation.
Okay, fine. Right. I was talking about our earlier space programs and what it's going to be for the next Chandrayaan 2. Then, of course, Chandrayaan 3 will be in pipeline. Then Shukrayaan 1. Mangalyaan 2, and then Aditya mission. And of course, as I said earlier, there's going to be a lot of work which is already started being, it's being done at ISRO, ISRO's various facilities, including the reusable launch vehicles, because these rockets which are expendable ones, which if we use it from that point of view, like SpaceX is already working on it, to spend so many dollars on a launch vehicle, it's a bit difficult if you want to go for future space launches. So the best part of it is why not make it reusable? Like some of these parts which are jettisoned on when the actual liftoff of a rocket takes place. Even US NASA uses those boosters which fall off into the ocean, and they bring it back and they reuse it for the next mission, if it is, of course, in a good condition. So that kind of thing, we are also, India, ISRO is planning on that. And of course, this PSLV, the C9, 10 satellites launched in one go. Then there was Cartosat, who launched. And Cartosat, if you would be knowing, Astrosat, of course, is astronomical. As I said, this particular mission will be helping India get the useful information. It is India's first multi-wavelength space observatory, which is giving a lot of information at every moment. Of course, there are supercomputers of ISRO which, process that data. They make it useful, and it's given to the relevant departments for their use. As I said, even for agricultural use, for farmers, this particular apps which are being designed, and some of the things which probably also you would be knowing, that the land information system, that is most of the collector offices, even in every city, they use that for land information, what we generally call Satbara, that kind of information, a particular land or piece of land, the particular location of it. So that comes, of course, as a bird's eye view from the satellite which is orbiting on the Earth, low Earth orbit. It's giving that useful information, and that is processed by these particular departments, government departments, and will be used for relevant applications. Now this Cartosat 2, which was actually meant to give this information about land, that is LIS, it is called Land Information System, which will be giving information as to what the roads, the networks of roads or railways in India are, in this huge subcontinent of ours, where the roads and railways are. And if you want to make a new railway line or roads, construct that, we should know what existing networks are. So for the smart city, layout, etc., this kind of information is going to be extremely useful. So all these things are, useful for us. And of course, for the UNESCO kind of, the World Heritage Center, some of the temples, for example, the Shore Temple of Mahabalipuram, if you take example, or even in Orissa, if you might have heard about the, Konark, the Sun Temple. If you want to get that location of that, how do we get to know? That is because of the satellites which are sending out those high resolution pictures. And then, of course, the tourism, everything is also associated with that. Then the actual information of the, 3D kind of imaging is also being done. Those are all the applications of satellite communication. And satellites, apart from entertainment, or it could be infotainment. These days, we say it is infotainment. And for those probably who do not know, you might be, knowing about it, but then India has sent satellites not only for our own applications, but for the sister states and the eastern parts of India, the 7 states which, are a bit remote places. For that also, getting to get an internet, for particularly the students studying in, say, Sikkim, Nagaland, Mizoram, or whatever those states, they should also be able to get, the internet quality and connectivity. So for that reason, why this satellites and, the application, the end use of satellites is to get good connectivity. It is not just for television or infotainment, etc. It is for, in today's scenario, if you see, even some of the, places where there are schools, they were earlier deprived of, getting internet, good internet connectivity. But now in this pandemic situation, it was more important to connect all those, even the rural places, the villages, the most remotest of all villages used to be, you need to be connected. So for that reason, our government has also realized that this is so important to connect the whole country. It is like this earlier there used to be this digital divide, which we say, that is the larger cities getting good connectivity and getting the best benefits, and the rural or the villages not getting anything. So it is either 1 or 0, like a digital divide it's called. So to bridge that, and particularly, getting or imparting this education on, say, such a platform like this, online classes, etc., for even the remotest of all places. So all this is because of the, the credit goes to our ISRO's satellite. Every satellite is contributing in some or the other way. So now this is the image of Chandrayaan-1 on the screen. And then there is this, how Mangalyaan also, Mangalyaan was more, challenging for us, because Moon, Chandrayaan project, Moon mission was, we had to just, of course, that is also a difficult one, but, crossing this distance of 385,000 kilometers into the nearest neighbor in space, that is the Moon, nearest of Earth. So that was pretty easy, because it is like, sending an orbiter around our own natural satellite. But when it comes to Mars, of course, it has to, make its, transfer its orbit from, we have to elevate this orbit. You need to, extend that. And finally, it has to go out of Earth's gravity and then go towards Mars. So from Earth to Mars, that transfer orbit, it was bit of challenge for us, but of course India did it extremely well, and that's the reason all these countries have appreciated our work. That is, in the first go, when India has done it in first attempt, of course it reached or it entered into the space elite nations of the to become first among the first 5 countries to have gone to the sending an orbiter to the Mars planet, red planet. Now this was done like 100 days to travel. It was quite a a challenging thing for us. And I have a small video, if time permits, we can see that Mangalyaan video as well. Now then later on comes this IRNSS, which is India's equivalent of this particular using our navigation systems, making it indigenous, because in earlier days when during there were India was deprived of getting things and making telesurgeries, etc. Then there are all these functions, including of course the television channels, then the weather forecasting, early warning signals. Like in case of tsunamis, of course there were countries like some countries like Australia who got to know that in advance that such tsunamis, high waves, tides are coming towards the country. So they were able to evacuate the things and take early warning, and take it up seriously. So these kind of things, even the remote sensing applications, then particularly communications systems, because when we are talking about these communication satellites, it's not just television signals, which we generally use for transmitting and receiving these TV channels. But sitting here in our country, if we have to talk to our relatives on the other side of the globe, that is say in US, and we, because of line of sight communications, of course, there are restricted things. Then wired and wireless communications, these being two aspects of electronic communication. So now we can easily transmit our messages using this long distance calls, etc. And we can talk to our relatives there, and mobile communication being becoming so common, and it is like exponentially grown like anything. And of course the internet services, earlier there were of course limited things. We know that internet services were not as many as today, but in last decade or so it has grown multifold, and of course exponentially, because this is the only branch of engineering which has grown multifold. And of course these end applications are societal applications only. And so satellites, they touch every aspect of our life even today. So that's the most important aspect. And of course the mapping of natural resources, if you know, AstroSat, and there are so many other satellites which are, of course, this specifically, they are meant for tapping natural resources, including even the drinking water, the fresh water resources, sorry, identifying it from space itself, and tapping those resources. Then there could be natural resources, including for mining, excavation. It could be used further. Then for oceanic applications, of course, in land and weather and climate, that's quite common. But for water management, of course, also it is going to be extremely important in near future, in the years to come. And of course, for agriculture and soil, as I said earlier, for farmers, they use it in day-to-day aspects, because how much to irrigate that plant. So it's called agri-electronics, of course, using that, how much to irrigate, how much not to irrigate, and what to plant and what not to. So all those things, the information will go to the farmers, and of course, they'll be able to yield a better crop, which will be, of course, a revolution for the country. And with this growing population and needs, it's very challenging. Then, of course, the oceanic study, as I said, it's going to be very useful. Then for disaster management, as I said earlier, for floods, in case of floods or in tsunamis, or getting early warning signal, this is very much needed. Then for telemedicine application and tele-education, as I said, this is the backbone, we can say. And of course, in for entertainment and all, when we talk about television signals, then there is for microwave links, we need to uplink and downlink those frequencies, and so we'll be able to receive those signals. Of course, with modulation and demodulation schemes and all, methods of transmitting signals for long distance, that holds good. It's applicable everywhere. And here, if you see, this is the picture which is taken from ISRO, how Bombay, the claw-shaped Mumbai looks like. The Brihan Mumbai, the oceanic or whatever activities take place. So that also is quite possible to see and monitor using these ISRO satellites. So that's the biggest contribution of ISRO to humankind. And it is not only for our country, as I said, even the other countries like the SAARC nations, etc. India has, contributed to their problems as they have, we have been extending, helping hands to them as well. Now, these are the missions to Mars, Moon, Mars, Venus, asteroids, and beyond, of course. And this will go on because still our human needs are, satisfied. We need to explore and also exploit those resources. So that's the reason. Of course, it has to be for useful and peaceful purposes, because end of the day, this humankind needs to be, we need to contribute in every way. And that's the reason we can, that is how we can make a difference to this. And of course, asteroid mining also is going to be very popular apart from this, because asteroids, some of these asteroids could be, rich in rare metals like platinum, or it could, if that is the case, if countries get to know, they are going to all make a race to get that particular asteroid, because metals like platinum or gold and silver, these are of course these rare metals which every country would look for. And most importantly, getting water resource in space. So watery, there could be watery asteroids as well. So all this research is going on, and of course there are missions to Europa, then the Jupiter's or Saturn's, satellite systems, knowing about that as well. So all those things will go on, but right now India has to focus on this most important future mission, that is Gaganyaan, which is going to be very ambitious, and it's going to be most challenging. And well, now in the on the screen, you can see this view of sounding rocket from TERLS, that is Thumba Equatorial, that is launch pads. That is the quite a common one. You can see even students can go and witness this. And I was also lucky to see this witness in 2016 when we had visited Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, that is ISRO, VSSC, LPSC, and IISU units in June and July. We had visited, of course, and this was really the opportunity for me to see how our wind tunnels, the great facilities of India are, and how important it is to enhance our capabilities in this particular ISRO's space application program. And of course, then we have long way to go, and we need to go on. And that's the reason why each one needs to contribute to space applications for the betterment of human space flight program, and for human beings and for humankind as well. For the future of our country, we need to go a long way. So with this, I have just shared this particular presentation. And if there is time, I think I can share a small video if time permits, or maybe we can go for question answer if time is already, we have crossed this thing, then time limit, then you can let me know. Thank you so much.
Ma'am, you can proceed with your video.
Okay.
Ma'am, you can proceed with your video.
Yes. There are a couple of videos which I was thinking I can share, because that gives the spirit of patriotism and basically, working in science technology, how marvelous it is, and extreme engineering it is. So I would like to show a small video of Chandrayaan as well as Mangalyaan. Just if you give me time, I'll share this particular video.
Liftoff will start in T-minus 10.
Yeah, just a moment. I'll be sharing the screen again. Okay. Okay. Are you able to see?
Yes, ma'am. It's visible.
Okay.
9,
Sure.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have ignition.
Okay, this is the animated version of Chandrayaan-2, and with every maneuver you can see that the orbit raising maneuver is being done, so that we are able to reach gradually towards moon. So this is what the video is showing. Okay, so that was the animated version of the video. It showed how this Chandrayaan-2 orbiter reached, and even the lander was about to land almost just 2 kilometers away from the surface of lunar surface, that is the surface of moon. So this was about this particular video, and I would like to show one more video. I would like to share a small video of Mangalyaan as well, because that makes us proud as to how our space flights have been carried out in the past and have made us so proud. So I'll be showing a small video of Mars orbiter and how this orbiter went into space. Okay. Okay, there's one more video which I wanted to show. If time permits, can I show that?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, are you able to see this video?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. This was when 100 days took place.
Now the vehicle has gone to a range of almost I'm extremely happy to announce that the PSLV C-25 vehicle has placed the Mars orbiter spacecraft very precisely into an elliptical orbit around Earth. The ISRO Satellite Center is the lead center for satellite development. And during July, August, September, they could put 3 satellites into geosynchronous geostationary orbits. We have with us Mr. Shivakumar, Director of ISRO Satellite Center, that took the responsibility and challenge for realizing the Mars orbiter spacecraft in a record time. Thank you, sir. Good evening to all of you. At this juncture, what I want to tell is hats off to everybody who contributed for this mission. Thanks to all of you. We have commenced the mission as far as this Mars mission is concerned. We have a long way to go, as you know, by time and also by the distance. We really do this job, whatever that has been left behind with launch vehicle, which has done that as of today, and we should be on our way to Mars as we go along. 24th of September 2014 is the date for which we should be able to really say that we have reached Mars or into Mars orbit, and the orbit will be as required. Thank you very much.
I take this opportunity to thank Chairman ISRO, who was the motivating force behind us, and all the centers and units and the industries and my project team for the excellent contribution for realizing the spacecraft in time.
ISRO is creating history for the country, and we have just crossed two major milestones of that process. The Mars orbiter spacecraft from the orbit of Earth towards Mars very precisely.
Mars orbit insertion phase has demanded a large amount of preparation at spacecraft level. All the operations of Mars orbit insertion will be independently realized by the on-board processor by sequential execution of events without any ground intervention. The commands required for the same were loaded onto the satellite 9 to 10 days prior to this event, that is on September 14 and 15, 2014. Mars orbit insertion operation starts with changeover to medium-gain antenna 3 hours prior to liquid engine burn start. This will be followed by forward maneuver 21 minutes prior to liquid engine burn, wherein the direction of satellite is changed and reoriented, pointing it to the desired thrust direction, so that the spacecraft velocity can be reduced by a desired amount. The spacecraft is held in the same configuration for some duration. Star sensors updates are enabled after forward maneuver. 5 minutes, 13 seconds prior to burn start time. The satellite is eclipsed by Mars, and hence the solar panels are unable to generate power as the sunlight is obstructed by Mars and doesn't reach it. The onboard lithium-ion 36 ampere hours batteries will provide the requisite power by the spacecraft. However, the spacecraft is still in the line of sight of Earth and will receive data from it. Thus, 5 minutes, 13 seconds into eclipse, actual burn start event will occur. The criticality of Mars orbit insertion burn lies in the fact that the orbiter should get captured without crashing into Mars or without leaving Mars. The liquid apogee motor is fired to slow down the orbiter's relative speed to the planet by 1,109 meters per second, and the velocity from 5.1 kilometers per second to 4.3 kilometers per second in relation to Mars. Getting anywhere between 200 kilometers and 11,000 kilometers will keep the orbiter in the Martian orbit. Nearly 4 minutes, 20 seconds after the burn start, Mars-occult stars. That is, the Mars orbiter will go behind the planet. As a result, no signal from the satellite will reach Earth for a considerable amount of time. Nearly 20 minutes past the burn start time, the orbiter is likely to come out of eclipse. And though the solar panels will start receiving the sunlight, it will continue to be operated on battery power.
Okay. This was quite a lengthy video, but good we had time to show this as well. Hope you all enjoyed this. This was a video which I wanted to show particularly because it gives, as I said earlier, it gives us a sense of patriotism, a sense of love for the country, and particularly the songs which were played in the background, especially Vande Mataram and Ma Tujhe Salam. So this is for the motherland, for the homeland, which each one of the scientists and engineers working at ISRO, they are working towards the betterment of the country. And I was extremely lucky to have done, as I said earlier, I have done my very first project at ISAC, that is ISRO Satellite Application Center. And I was also extremely fortunate, that is in 2017, July 17, I got the opportunity to attend an international conference on enabling spacecraft technology for industry interface. And at that time, I also was able to meet Kiran Kumarji, the former ISRO chairman. And I attended his session. And also, of course, Dr. Siven sir was there, who is presently the chairman ISRO. And Somnath, who is Dr. Somnath, who is the head of LPSC. So all these scientists and engineers, I was able to interact with them. And most importantly, I was extremely lucky to get the opportunity to see the tests, the final tests which were going on for the Chandrayaan 2 mission, particularly for the orbiter and of course the lander. And I was able to get the first-hand, feel of how things work there. And I'm also, I can say, proud to say that some of my students whom I had, guided them during their BTech Aerospace, and also from Aeronautical Society of India, students who are pursuing their, studies. Their project. I was a guiding. I was there for guidance as well as for mentoring of these projects. So I can say, fortunately, that some of my students are well placed today, even at ISRO, then ADA, as well as at National Aerospace Labs. Some of my students whom I had earlier guided and of course taught some subjects which were specialization subject. Some of them are also at HAL Nasik, and of course some at DRDO and ADA. So fortunately for me, like it is maybe not directly presently I'm not contributing, but indirectly through my students, I can say that yes, this is a great opportunity to be a part of this space and defense of the country. So thank you again for inviting me here today. And thanks for patient listening, because this was quite a lengthy session. And I'm sure you liked particularly the videos which I had shown. Some of them were rare and some of them were part of our Indian space program. So that's why I took this opportunity to share those rare videos here. And hope you all enjoyed it. And once again, would like to thank the organizers for inviting me here today. And again, I would like to wish all of you happy World Space Week. Of course, this is concluding today, but this particular tempo and this enthusiasm should go on and on, not only for this particular week, but throughout this year and for the years to come. So best wishes to all of you. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your wonderful address as well as your lecture. So there were a bit doubts which were quite trivial and we have answered it. We have managed to answer it. But there were some doubts by Rohan. So I would basically like you to unmute yourself and ask your questions to ma'am. Rohan, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you may proceed with your questions, Dhruv.